All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of Daily December 2023. This is day 7. So, today, ran my first Fabula Ultima actual session last night, and I learned some things, and I want to talk about them because, and I don't know if I've ever actually said this on the channel before, but there is a large difference between learning about an RPG and playing an RPG. And there are certain things that you will only learn by playing. It doesn't matter how many times you read the rules. It doesn't matter how good you are at understanding RPGs. And I personally consider myself really good. There's just certain things that you won't learn until you run it. It's one of the reasons why I do these mini campaigns in December, because I want to learn more about RPGs. And every new RPG I run, I learn new things, and a lot of them I take into my other games. The clock system from Fabula Ultima, I have already used in one of my D&D games, and I plan on using it in try this again. I plan on using it in my Zelda campaign as well. It is an unbelievably useful kind of mechanic that you can adapt to literally any RPG. So, today, I wanted to talk about a few of the things I learned when I was running my first Fabula Ultima game. The first thing that I wasn't quite expecting is in Fabula Ultima, there aren't any quote-unquote skills. What they have is you have 4 attributes. They are dexterity, might, insight, and wisdom. And each one does different things, obviously. Dexterity is, your agility, how good you are at being agile, muscle control, things like that. Might is exactly what it sounds like. It's how tough you are. But because there isn't a constitution score as well, that also kind of gets folded into might as well. So your physical strength and your physical muscles, and then also your constitution, your fortitude, is kind of built into your might score as well, which I actually don't mind. In Dungeons & Dragons and a lot of games that use a 6 attribute system where they have strength, dexterity, wisdom, intelligence, charisma, and constitution. Constitution tends to be an almost useless stat. If you look in D&D 5th edition, there are no constitution checks in the entire game. There's nothing you can do to use your constitution to do anything other than a constitution saving throw, which for the most part are only used for poison, cold, and concentration checks. And those are the only times you will ever use constitution in the entire game. Now, concentration checks, if you're a spellcaster, it comes up a lot, but it's a really boring thing to use it for. Because, first of all, a lot of spellcasters don't realize that a concentration check is a constitution saving throw. And so a lot of them don't quite understand how the mechanic works. And I know this from doing this for 10 years. It took me like 4 or 5 years to realize that you add your constitution score to your concentration checks, and it's not just a d20 roll. So, yeah. And then, like I said, for poison saves and cold saves, there's not that many times that comes up, especially with how easy it is to shake off poison, and the fact that there's at least 2 classes I know of that get immunity to poison in the current version of D&D 5th edition. So yeah, Constitution is an almost worthless stat. It gives you hit points, which are great when you level up, but there's a lot of different ways you can calculate hit points for characters without having to have a specific stat for it. And then, you can never use your Constitution to do anything. You can just use it to keep bad things from happening. Whereas literally every other stat, you can use them to do things. So the fact that that Fabula Ultima kind of just rolls it into your might score. I think that works really well. There may be some people that complain, well, that means that, you know, if you're not super, super strong, then you're not going to have a lot of hit points. Which, to be perfectly honest, is kind of how it works already. Most classes that get a lot of hit points also happen to be strength-based classes. What's the class that gets the highest amount of hit points? Oh yeah, barbarians, which require strength for most of their abilities. What are other classes that get lots of hit points? Fighters, which can be strength or dexterity-based, but more often than not are strength-based. Paladins, which are strength-based. Yeah, no, actually, strength is already highly correlated with hit points. It doesn't really make sense to have a Constitution score unless you do something like what they did in 4th edition, where any ability score can become useful and can let you do things because your class will have particular ability scores that they just use for everything. Like, there were classes that used their Constitution score for attack rolls and damage rolls, because 4th edition was awesome. So anyway, going back to what I learned. So you have these 4 attribute scores, and every check that you do in the game is a combination of those 4. The way that I'm going to try this one more time. That means when I opened up my campaign, basically what I had done was, because of what the backstories the characters had written in the world that we created, I decided that I thought for this mini campaign it would be fun to set this mini campaign in an area that we call the Waking Lands. It was an area that was designed by Imp, one of the players, during our Session 0. The Session 0 is on the channel if you want to watch us create it. And the Waking Lands is basically, millennia ago, this great light fell from the heavens and landed in this area. And it didn't explode or anything, it just kind of hit the area. It wasn't a meteor or something, it was just this light that stayed there for a while and then was gone. But the entire area, from that point on, just has ambient light all the time. It doesn't matter what you do, it's always bright there. Not like bright as in, oh, I can't see, but it's always effectively midday there. There's no day-night or anything like that, and even if you like cover your eyes and things like that, you can still kind of see the light. And so because of that, fun fact about brain physiology, your brain actually requires sleep to function. Who'd have thought? And sleeping in rooms with bright light and stuff like that actually interrupts your brain's ability to go into REM sleep, which is the deepest form of sleep. That's the actual sleep that is useful. Non-REM sleep, like cat naps and stuff like that, can help. But if you don't get into that deep sleep, your brain doesn't kind of reset effectively. It doesn't get time to be turned off for a little bit, which isn't technically true because your brain never turns off, but it needs that little resting period. Otherwise, bad things start happening. Like you start hallucinating, and you can have a psychotic break, and you know, completely lose your ability to tell what's real and what's not. It's real bad. I know this for a fact because I had insomnia for about 6 months, where for 6 months I didn't sleep. What would happen is I would randomly pass out for about maybe like 2 or 3 hours, which is enough to get that REM cycle, but it's not enough to be in any kind of good mental shape. And towards the end, I wasn't even passing out enough. And I started hallucinating really bad, like complete break from reality kind of stuff. And they put me on something. I can't remember. They gave me a like an Ambien or something to knock me out for a little bit. And it reset everything and I was fine. But yeah, so because of that, in the Waking Lands, the longer you stay there, the more chance you have of just completely losing touch with reality. Because again, you can't technically get sleep there. So we created this thing where, yeah, there's nothing like intrinsically dangerous. There's creatures that live there that, you know, might try to hurt you in that. But it's not like super deadly or anything. It's just light all the time. And because of that, you can't stay in it for too long. And so the area has just been uninhabited, and there's no official rules or laws that say you can't go there. People just don't go there because bad things happen to people that stay there for too long. And just like modern society, we are perfectly fine explaining away physical disabilities, but as soon as we start talking about mental disabilities, people don't like it. And so, and that's not to say that the physically disabled have it somehow easier in society. They don't. However, having both physical and mental disabilities, I can tell you right now, explaining my physical disabilities significantly easier than it is trying to get people to understand my mental disability and not just kind of write it off as of, well, it just sounds like you need to work harder to keep your mind on task. So anyway, and so the first thing that happened is all of these characters were from different sides of the world. We have 4 kind of major nations in there, and we had characters from every single nation, which I thought was cool. We didn't intend to, it just happened. And so to get everyone there, I created this little plot point. We have a character playing a robot, and robots aren't common at all in the society. It's a mostly human society. We went away from like having all the different fantasy races and stuff like that simply because I was basing it a little bit more on like Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy V, where yes, they do have non-human races, but the vast majority of everything is human. And I just make things easier. Races aren't technically a thing in Fabula Ultima, so I'm like, yeah, that's perfectly fine. We do have one character that is a sentient red panda that comes from a race of people called the kinfolk, or the kindfolk. So it's not that they just don't exist, or I wouldn't let my players do it. It just isn't a super common thing. So anyway, she's playing a robot, and she has kind of a mysterious past, and we kind of created this thing about the fact that people would be kind of wary of her because she's the only living robot in the world, and I just thought it would be interesting if we were to kind of connect her backstory with this Waking Land, with some other stuff that the players are going to discover that I won't reveal. And so as part of her backstory, she gets into a dangerous situation, and people are asking her questions, and they're trying to capture her so they can basically take her apart and figure out what she is. And it causes her to have this really uncomfortable burning sensation in her chest, like mega heartburn. And then she kind of explodes in a bright white flash, and then she's gone. And it transports her halfway across the world to basically get everyone else together. It goes to this other kingdom. And so everybody else, like one person I write in their backstory, well, you heard that there's this robot character. And you think that they may be the secret to ultimate power because that's what motivates you. And so that character comes in. And I'm like, oh, well, this character is tracking this character because this character is kind of dangerous and you think they might be kind of useful for you. And that one comes in. And then another character's like, oh, you just like walking around. And you heard that there's some dangerous people walking around. So you're going to go walk over to them and tell them to stop being dangerous. And I get them all together and then shoop, and they get teleported off. However, in that opening scene, I had one person who was new to RPGs in general. I don't remember if he's never played an RPG, a tabletop RPG, or if he's just relatively inexperienced in them. But at the very least, he hadn't played in a while. And then I had 2 other people that had been playing with me for years. And the issue came in that when they started doing things in Roll20, they actually, on the Fabula Ultima character sheets, they actually have a few buttons on one of the pages of your KK character sheet that are just commonly asked for rolls. And I fell into the trap of thinking that these were actually things that were listed in the book and were actually part of Fabula Ultima, and they're not. They were just names that the person that created the character sheet created for them. And I got really stuck on asking people for, let me look. I'm going to open up a character sheet here so I can actually look. Stats. So, I would ask people for an inspect check. Inspect isn't a skill. There are no skills in Fabula Ultima. So I'd always go, I'd like you to make an inspect check, which is in insight and insight. And I fell into that trap very, very quickly. And when people started asking you to do things that I didn't really have a solution or a button that fit it really well, then I had to start doing what I should have been doing from the beginning and just go, okay, well, let's call that an insight and willpower check. And that's how you're supposed to run Fabula Ultima, is a character will explain what they want to do, and you will go, okay, well, based on what you explained you want to do and your character, I think you would probably use your insight, which is your intellectual prowess, and your willpower, which is just, again, your kind of internal fortitude, your ability to stand for your desires, to resist corruption, things like that. And once I got a little bit more used to that, for me it became easier, but for the players it actually became a little bit more difficult, because in Roll20, rolling, there is a button right above all the skills that just says roll, and you can pick which stats you want to roll with. So if you use that, that works perfectly fine, but it's hidden at the bottom of the second page of the character sheet that a lot of people don't realize exists, because when you open up the sheet, you see the character page, which looks like your entire character sheet. And so it's hidden on a page that says stats. The page itself is called stats, which is not what you think about when you're going to try and roll something. I guess it is kind of, because you need to look at your stats to roll it, but that's not how it works on most Roll20 sheets at all. Yeah, so the first thing that I learned for running Fabula Ultima is, don't worry about, there is a page in the core rulebook that talks about some like commonly used checks, and it tells you what attributes you should use for them, and it gives them just kind of generic explanations. I'm going to actually look up the core book or open it up here to read out exactly what they, to give you guys some examples. All right, so where are you? Frequently used checks. So, moving silently, hiding, and acting unnoticed. They say suggested check. Again, these are just suggestions. They are not cold hard facts. Is a dexterity and dexterity. Avoiding a trap or finding a way to flee a collapsing building would be dexterity and insight. Anticipating someone's movements and catching them by surprise would also be dexterity and insight. So this is what I'm assuming the person that made this Fabula Ultima character sheet, I'm assuming this is what they were referencing when they created those basically skill buttons. But they were definitely a they were definitely a hindrance for me, because it stopped me from using the system how it's intended to be, which is literally player describes what they want to do, and you go, okay, that to me that sounds like that would require some fine muscle control, so that's dexterity, and it also requires a little bit of your own knowledge because you're using former training. So we're going to call that dexterity insight. Things like that. So yeah. So if you're going to be running, I need a drink. So much better. Okay. So if you're going to be running Fabula Ultima, the first thing you need to get comfortable with, and you need to get your players comfortable with, is just start telling them attributes to roll. Don't give them skill names or anything like that, especially if you're doing it on Roll20, because Roll20 is going to default to this skill system that doesn't exist in Fabula Ultima, and it just makes learning the system that much harder. And the system itself is not difficult to learn. It's just because it is such an open-ended system, and for the most part, most of the hard and fast rules that exist in it happen in are geared around combat, which is not the sole thing that the game, like, this isn't a combat simulator or anything like that. However, because combat is the most complicated part of any RPG, that's where most of their rules tend to be focused on, because kind of deciding upon how things work on the fly for something like combat doesn't really work, because it creates difficulty in kind of planning ahead, because if you don't know how the system works before you make your choices, then you're going to make a choice and then find out later that it doesn't have the result that you wanted it to have. So yeah, lean into the attributes. They're very, very good. They're as complex as they need to be, and yeah, and lead into clocks. I haven't even introduced clocks to the players yet, because we only had about I think we only ran for about a little over 2.5 hours, which is normal for my sessions, because my anxiety makes it really hard for me to run really long sessions. So, that being said, the second thing that I learned, and this is going to be combat focused, is the kind of popcorn. They basically use an initiative that in other systems has been called popcorn initiative, which is basically you don't have a set initiative order. The players get to choose. The players get to choose who goes first, second, third, fourth, and the DM gets to choose who goes first, second, third, fourth on the monster size, and it can change every single. You can change every single combat. One of the things I found very quickly is for players that are very used to an initiative order, telling them, hey, who wants to go first, is not the right way to do it. And that's what I did, and it went poorly. It went very, very poorly. And so, and I'm gonna see if maybe I just missed something in initiative. So, around each round the player's side, alternate taking turns, starting with one person from one side who has from the side who has the initiative. Yep. So it doesn't really explain a whole lot about discuss goals, initiative. Then rounds and turns. Yeah, so what they don't really give you too much of an idea about basically how to kind of divvy out who goes first. And again, because almost every other RPG I've run has an initiative order that you run, it turns into everyone just kind of looking and not wanting to speak up and go, well, I'm going to go next or anything like that. And especially on if you're running it online, which is how I run all of my games now, you also have the issue of online, because there's a delay in hearing things and saying things. It's very easy to talk over other people, and most players, first of all, don't want to talk over people. And so they'll be very, very hesitant to speak up, which doesn't really happen at a table. For a table, if somebody speaks up, it's very easy to kind of make eye contact with someone else that was thinking about it, or just to make eye contact with other people and have kind of those nonverbal conversations about, okay, who's going to go first? That can't really happen in a Zoom call. if you leave your players, your new players, to just kind of go with whoever wants to go first, you're going to end up with a lot of indecisions and kind of dead air. And I'll be uploading last night's episode to my YouTube channel on Sunday, which is when I upload them all. So if you want to watch it, you'll notice that combat was a bit of a slog at first. Especially since I didn't know how everything worked as well. So it took me a little bit of time to get into it. And it took the players a little bit of time to get into it. And the thing about Fabula Ultima combat, and they mention this on page 63, they have this little prompt that says dynamic turn order. And they talk about the fact that part of the complexity of combat in Fabula Ultima, which a lot of people will think, well, you don't have to move. You don't have to worry about distance. You don't have to worry about cover or anything like that. This is massively simple compared to 90% of the RPGs on the market right now. Like, all you have to do is you pick someone to attack and figure out if they're flying or not. That's super, super simple. There's really not a whole lot of strategy in something like that. Well, no, because turn order can change every round, and depending on how things work, you may get 2 or 3 turns in a row, depending on how many creatures you're fighting, or your side may get it. The order that you do things will massively change how things work. And one of my players, and I'm going to, I generally don't single out my players too often, but she was so brilliant when she did this because she just got it. Chax, who plays in one of my D&D games, she also plays in my Zelda game. She figured out her character is built. Her character is a tank. It literally is. One of her classes is a guardian, and she chose the dual shield ability, which basically means she uses 2 shields and she can punch people with them. It's a really cool ability. It's one of my favorites. But it means that in addition to being able to wear martial armor so that she already has a high armor class, she also wears 2 shields, which means she gets the benefit of having 2 shields. So she adds 4 to her defense. Her defense is a 15. And when your rolls, the best rolls you can do are 2d12. And none of the monsters I run or will be running this entire thing have d12s. The highest stat they're ever going to have is a d10, and they generally only have 1 of that. So when your maximum roll for most of your checks is an 18, a 15 is really good. And it's not like a d20 where, oh, well, that means that, you know, they have a 3 and 18 chance of rolling. No, because it's 2 different dice, the odds of rolling in the middle are significantly higher than the odds of rolling on either end. So getting an 18, a 17, 16, or a 15, so it would have been 4 out of 18. Getting those 4 numbers is significantly less likely than rolling anything in the middle. If you look at statistical outcomes of rolling 2d6, which is going to be the most common thing. The reason that 7 is the most often rolled number is because there's so many different ways you can roll 7, but there's only a couple like there's only one way you can roll 12, and that's by rolling 2 6s. And there's only one way you can roll 2, and that's by rolling 2 1s. So those 2 are the absolute least likely to be rolled by a pretty significant margin. Whereas if you're rolling a d20, you have a 5% chance of rolling any number on there. So anytime you start rolling multiple dice, you change the spread of rolls that you're going to be likely to get. So anyway, Chax's character, Amintus, is the character's name. She's the robot. She's wearing bronze armor and a pair of shields, and she is stacked. She's got a lot of hit points, and she can take a lot of damage. Well, one of the other characters, played by Imp, he is playing the Red Panda, and he does not have a lot of hit points. He doesn't have a super high defense. I believe his defense is only 10 or 11. So he's significantly easier to hit, and he gets hit a couple of times and almost goes down. But Amintus, Chax's character, the robot, has a bunch of abilities that allow her to take damage for other players, and she can do this thing called guarding. Guarding is something that everyone in the game can do, where you basically put yourself in front of another character, and any melee attacks against them have to target you. They can't target the person you're guarding. And she has a special ability where even if that person does get targeted, like if they get targeted by magic or a ranged attack that she can't block, she gives them resistance to all damage, so they take half damage. It's a really useful thing. So her choice for all of combat was she basically would just sit in front of different characters and take damage for them and protect them. And it was extremely effective. I can tell you right now, if she hadn't done that, they may not have won their first combat, because I didn't quite understand how to balance combat, and the monsters that I threw at them might have been a little bit more than they could have dealt with for their first combat. If I'd just taken one monster out of it, it probably would have been fine. But for their first combat, they barely survived. But anyway, so we're doing this, and basically because the guard command basically lasts until you take your next turn, that meant that person would be protected as long as Chax didn't take their turn. And so what ended up happening was there was one round where everybody in the party took their turn, and then we just had Chax last. And so what she decided to do was she took her turn to heal herself, because she learned a healing spell from one of the monsters, because she's a chimerist and they're super cool. And then it went back to the top of the order. One of the monsters took their turn, and the immediate thing that Chax did was she went and took her turn and went back to guarding. And the monster that attacked didn't attack the person that she'd been guarding, because it had other problems at the time. So it was this incredibly useful thing where she got to get a heal for herself because she needed more hit points. And then the very next thing that happened is she went back to guarding. So she was able to kind of game the system to get 2 turns in a row effectively. And that is where the strategy in Fabula Ultima comes from, is the idea that because you can switch up the turns and anyone on your team can go at any point, and if you have more people on your team than you have monsters that you're fighting, you're going to get multiple turns back to back. As they started knocking out monsters, they would get 2 or 3 turns in a row, for different characters, obviously. But that became really, really useful. And that's the strategy for Fabula Ultima. It's not, getting everybody lined up so that your fireball hits perfectly. No, it's figuring out how the turn order is going to work best. Because sometimes it's going to be best to have, again, they have this tank character, and she was doing beautifully just protecting people from getting hit. And it worked really well because she has a massively high defense score. But it also gave her the ability to kind of game the system. And this is the other thing that I thought was going to be useful and turned out, I don't think it was quite as useful as I wanted it to be because the players are still learning. But it did turn out relatively well for me. I'm going to switch over to, this is, what is that from? What else do I have on right now? Oh, we can do that. Okay. I just had another thing on that had opened up the wrong scene. So, so this is my Roll20 board that I used for combat, and I got a bunch of animated tokens that I bought off the marketplace, and and I'm very, very happy with them. I got a bunch of tokens. I think I spent $15, and I got like, I don't know, 3 or 4 dozen animated tokens from this dude that I can't remember his name, but you're super awesome. If you recognize that I'm using your stuff, put your stuff in the comments down below. You're amazing and awesome. I think his name is Dursen or something like that. It starts with a D. But anyway, this is what I did to kind of give the players everything that they need to understand about combat at a glance. These are the monsters. You can see there are 5 of them here, and these are the players. And I made this little box to make it easier for the players to know where they stand. Anything in the air here is a flying creature, and anything on the ground is a ground-based creature. And when they take their turns, I take them from here, and I move them back here. So the players at any time can see how many turns the enemies have, and what characters are flying and what characters are on the ground. In addition, I did the same thing with the players. And at the end, it turned into me basically moving them because I would tell them to move their characters and they just wouldn't because they were still confused. So I would just move their characters. But basically, this means nobody on the team has taken a turn. And that means Silas has taken their turn. And then Akito has taken his turn. And Murado has now taken his turn. And so just by having a visual representation that shows the players, first of all, how many creatures exist. And in Roll20, you can definitely use, like, you can see all these different things for status effects you can stack on them, which is really good because there's a grand total of 6 status effects, and knowing which ones are affecting which creature is very, very useful. And then they also have a thing called Crisis, which I wasn't marking and I really should have. But Crisis, you can do something like that, which maybe that's not great because that makes it look like they're dead, or just pick something that's easy for them to see. Like maybe we'll call that Crisis. So the players at a glance can go, oh, look, that person's in crisis. And make sure that they understand what each of the different things means. And by the way, you can buy more status effect things in the market as well. These are the defaults that come with it. But if you want more stuff, it all exists on the market. And Roll20 is really great with stuff like that. I believe you can make your own stuff too. I could not tell you how to do it. And it might require one of the subscriptions to be able to do it. But yeah, it's one of the reasons I like Roll20, because there's a lot of stuff for free on there and that you can use, and then you eventually can get to the point where if you are very much invested in it, purchasing stuff like this is very useful as well. So yeah, so that's one of my big recommendations for Fabula Ultima is, even if you're playing on a table, have some visual representation that shows them, not a turn order, because turn order doesn't really exist, but it does show them who has taken their turns and who hasn't. Because at that point, in addition to the ability to see, okay, well, we know that we have this many other people to go before the round is over, they can also start choosing. It's like, okay, well, that guy's already done his turn, so we don't need to attack that particular person ever again. And if you want to differentiate things on Roll20, that's what these things are for. So as you can see, you can very easily go like this. And so if they want to attack any one of these, you can go, well, I want to attack the blue. I use these for slimes. The actual stat block is for a creature called a mellow slime. These were anything but mellow, but they worked. So they go, I want to attack the red slime, or I want to attack the blue dreadmoth. And it's just, it's as simple as that to make Fabula Ultima combat go from, I really don't know what I'm doing and I'm not sure how to do this super effectively, to no, now we know exactly which one is which. We can focus fire our stuff. We can do a lot of different things to ensure that we know what's going on, just like you would in an actual JRPG. Like, part of combat in a JRPG is figuring out, okay, which targets do I need to kill first? Which ones don't matter as much? which are the slow ones, so I can attack the slow ones first and they never get a turn. Things like that. Yeah, let's go back here. So overall, again, this is one session, 2.5, almost 3 hour session that I ran Fabula Ultima. That's it. And I learned that much from a single session. And I would hope that the suggestions that I'm making here help a lot of people if they do decide to start running Fabula Ultima. Even if you're running it on a table, get minis out. Again, you don't technically need minis to run it, but just clarify an area on the table where you can go, okay, this is the monster. This is where the monster minis go when they haven't taken their turn. This is where they go when they have taken their turn. This is where the players' minis go when they haven't taken their turn. This is where they go when they have taken their turn. So no one has to go, okay, who hasn't gone yet? Who's going to go after me? That is a big part of Fabula Ultima, is just understanding the turn economy and understanding which abilities are going to synergize with which other players, and what you're going to get, what's going to give you the most bang for your buck when you're choosing who goes first, who goes second, and the things like that. And gaming the system, exactly how Jax did it. Because of how she did things, there was only a single turn where one of the characters was not protected. And yet, in that single turn, she was able to basically do 2 actions. She's able to heal herself and then start protecting them again. And that's just from using the system the exact way it's supposed to. And Jax is just super awesome. And normally, I tend to figure out stuff like that before my players do. Because, again, I spend hours and hours and hours learning and dissecting these systems so that I can teach them, and so that I can do videos on them. That's what I was thinking of. And Chax just picked it up really, really quickly, and I was super proud that she pulled that off. And yeah, so I hope anyone that's thinking about running Fabula Ultima, I hope you watch this video, because I think those 2 tips are going to make your first section significantly better. And if you play Fabula Ultima, I think this is good, useful stuff for you to know too. So anyway, for the rest of Daily December, I will probably be having more Fabula Ultima updates as I go. First of all, because I mean, this is an RPG-focused channel. So talking about RPG stuff is not the craziest thing in the world. And second of all, I'm still really excited about Fabula Ultima. I had so much fun last night. I can't wait to play again. So yeah. Anyway, that's going to be all for me today. As always, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to turn notifications on. All those things are super, super important. And in the comments down below, what do you guys, I'm going to show you this again because I'm massively proud of it. What do you guys think of my little battle screen? I have a little spot for clocks, so if we do have a clock in combat, I can run it right there. And this is actually a clock that I bought where what I can do is, if I want 2 sections full, I just do that and it just automatically fills it for me. They're really, really nice. I think they're called like space clocks or something like that. And they were 100% worth the like few bucks that I spent on them. And then yeah, I just have this. I found this pixel art that's in the public domain. It was really nice. I made this box myself, which was really, really hard for me in Photoshop, but I did it. And then everything else, these are all just tokens that these I actually made online. There's a thing that I can't remember right now. It is called Reroll. Reroll does is basically an 8-bit character creator kind of thing where you can create your own 8-bit tokens like this for online games, or if you just want a visual representation of your character, you can do this, and it's kind of cool and fun, and I like it. I think it's amazing. So anyway, Again, in the comments down below, do you like my idea for like a battle scene? If you run Fabula Ultima, are you considering doing something like this, even if it's on the table, just so that you have some kind of visual representation? Let me know all that stuff in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, it's all for me today. I'll see you guys in the next time. All right? Bye-bye.